What's up guys, Kudou here. Anybody who's been following me knows that I'm a huge fan of Radiant Historia. It's one of those weird little titles for the DS that nobody seems to know about, kind of like The World Ends With You. Very few people were as excited as I was when I heard they were remaking this thing for the 3DS, and I was happy to see it get the Atlas 3DS remake treatment. So did it live up to my excitement? Well, let's find out. I'd say the first thing we have to talk about is the art style, because it is pretty drastically different this time around. The original went for a slightly darker, more Final Fantasy-ish art style, while the newer one, there's just color and brightness everywhere. On a technical level, it's much more impressive, and it's not just the box artwork that's changed. The characters look much sharper and much more detailed this time around. Like I said before, on a technical level, what they've done with these characters is very impressive. Much more detail's been put into their outfits and their faces, and their brighter, more vivid colors really make them stand out. As great as they are, and I don't want to get too negative here, I think I still prefer the art style of the original. And I'm not just being a hipster here. While the original was a bit darker and more jagged, I feel like that fits the tone of the story better. I feel like a lot of the characters lost a bit of their personality in the transition. Like, getting back to Stock, the main character, for a second, he's just so pretty now. Not that a pretty blonde anime boy is a bad thing or anything, but it just doesn't fit his character as well. OG Stock was like this blank, arrogant mercenary. He's just got that look on his face that says, I have no interest in you, I have no interest in what you're about to say, please move, I'm on a mission. And this Stock looks like he's modeling for a teen magazine cover. Though I guess none of this makes sense if we don't talk about the story. When the story begins, the Earth is ended because everything on it has turned into sand. These two Keebler elf dudes have the power to go back and forth in time, and they're looking for a way to stop this from happening. What we're seeing at the beginning is their last attempt to save the Earth. Flash back to our main character Stock, who's talking to his boss, Heiss. Stock is a member of Special Intelligence, and probably the best one at his job. His job is essentially to be sent into suicide missions over and over and over again until he eventually dies. On your latest errand, your boss Heiss has given you this book called the White Chronicle. All of the pages are completely blank, but your boss makes you take it anyway because he somehow knows it's going to be an important plot point. He also gives you these two party members to follow you around. As you can imagine, Stock hates working with other people. Because it was cool when Squall did it. But again, Heiss is very insistent that they are going to be important to you, wink wink. One more mystery to add to the pile. Some stuff happens, you meet the Cabbage Patch Kids, and they tell you that you now have the power to travel through time. This is what the book was for, it's a time travel device. This starts the central idea behind the game. The book you have is called the White Chronicle, and every time you make an important decision, it gets recorded. Your job is to travel between the different timelines and figure out a way to make a timeline where the Earth doesn't get destroyed by the desertification. Desertification being the thing that's turning everything into sand. On top of trying to save the world, you're also fighting off an invading empire, because of course there's an invading empire. This one's called Grenorg. With everything literally turning into dust, Grenorg is trying to take as many areas and resources as possible. As you can imagine, this is a very leading factor in the Earth getting destroyed in the first place, so this is one of the things that you have to stop. Really, anything I can tell you from there is going to be a spoiler, and I don't want to spoil too much because I do think the story in this game is its strongest point. I know time travel and jumping between timelines might make some of you roll your eyes, but trust me, it is pretty darn good. I think the thing I love about it so much is the time travel stuff is implemented really well into the gameplay. If you're stuck on something in the current timeline you're in, you can switch to a different timeline to see if that has the answer you're looking for. For example, if you're in one timeline and someone's supposed to deliver something to you and that person isn't showing up, you can go to the other timeline to go to where that person was supposed to be and see what's holding them up. Then, if you fix whatever their problem was, they can help you in the other timeline. It gets a little confusing, but just trust me, okay? It is implemented very well. Should probably talk about the battle system too, I suppose. On paper, the battle system doesn't sound that unique. It's pretty much just a basic grid-based, turn-based battle system. But there are two huge things to keep the gameplay fun and exciting. The first being that most of your special moves will take enemies and move them on the grid. So what you want to try and do is get all of the enemies bunched up on the same space, and then every time you attack that space, you'll be attacking all the enemies at once. The second is that you can take your turn and switch it with any other turn on the board to create huge combo chains. For example, let's say it's your 3 characters, then an enemy character, then your 3 characters again. Well, you can have one of your characters switch with the enemy character so that the enemy character gets to go immediately, but then you get 6 turns in a row. The downside is that it'll lower your character's defense for 1 turn, but if you play around it, it makes the battle system a lot more fluid. Figuring out a way to maximize your turns and make the most out of the switching turns mechanic is actually what makes the boss fight so unique. If you use it incorrectly, then your characters will be so weak the enemies will kill you immediately. But if you use it correctly, then everything on the board gets packed together and completely decimated. It takes a lot of thought, you're not just mashing the A button. If you played the original, then there's one huge, fiery question in the back of your mind right now, and that is anything different enough for me to buy the game? I'm happy to report that, yes, there is. This new chick Nemesia shows up, and she adds a lot to the White Chronicle. What I mean by this is she expands on some of the smaller plots of the game, and she creates new sort of what-if scenarios. So while the main story itself doesn't change very much, there's a lot of new content in the side stuff, and you'll find out a lot more about the world that you didn't get the first time through. Whether or not it's enough to actually buy the game and go through the game again, especially because it's going to be a lot longer this time since you're doing all the side stuff, is completely up to you, but just know that if you're wondering if there's going to be any new content, there is. On top of this, there's also add-on content that Atlus is going to add on later. I'm not a huge fan of the Atlus DLC stuff because they overcharge for their stuff like mad, but honestly for this game, as long as they keep the prices reasonable, I could see this game having a lot more longevity. Honestly, time travel keeps the game so open-ended that they could just add some new story missions and stuff that would just add so much more to the game. They could make it work, we'll just have to see what they choose to do with it. Speaking of which, most of the game is now voice acted, and honestly, I think the voice acting is done pretty well. If you're really worried about the English voice acting, then the undub is already online. Like, I'm sure there's a way you can get the Japanese voices if you really need them. To be honest, I normally play with the sound off anyways because I'm always listening to the radio or a YouTube video or something, but I mean, if it really bothers you that much, then go for it. If you never got a chance to play this game on the DS and you've ever uttered the words, "I play games for the story," then I give this game its full worth it price of $40, hands down. Hands down. In fact, I'll up the ante a little bit. If you did play this game on the DS but you never got around to finishing it, then definitely pick this game up for $40. This is a game that you're going to want in your collection and you're going to want to have said that you beat. With all the stuff they added and the DLC content that's going to be coming later, this is definitely one of those 3DS games that's worth the money. Also, can I just say for a second, thank you Atlus for not releasing this game for $50. For those who might have missed it, Atlus has a nasty habit of releasing their remakes from the DS on the 3DS for $50. Thank God they didn't do it for this one. There's only like 4 to 6 releases planned for the rest of the year, so I mean, it's not like you're going to be using your 3DS for anything else. You might as well pick this game up. If you are someone who beat the original and you're just wondering if there's enough new content to keep you invested, then I give this game a worth it price of $25. While grinding through a JRPG you've already beaten is a little rough, I do think the Nemesia stuff they added and the voice acting and a lot of the newer content that they added is just really nice. Maybe not full price nice, but if you happen to find it used on Craigslist or something, then at least consider it. It's good. Now, if you're someone who's just never really been into JRPGs and the story stuff still sounds interesting to you, then I think I can recommend this game for about $15. Yeah, you're going to have to deal with random battles and turn-based combat and all that stuff that JRPGs are known for, but if you can look past that and maybe set the difficulty down to a lower setting, hey, no one's judging you here, then I think you'll find the story and the time travel puzzle solving to be a pretty nice experience. At least $15 worth of a nice experience. I love it when an Atlus gem like this comes to the surface and reminds everybody that the company is capable of more than just Shin Megami Tensei and Persona and charging $50 for DS remakes. And honestly, Atlus has my full support if they want to continue doing this in the future. Give me that Izuna, that Touch Detective, Luminous Arc, Nights in the Nightmare. The possibilities are absolutely endless. I know I said in my ratings video that I wanted to avoid giving my games review scores because I feel like people get a little too hyper-focused on them, and my idea of what a game score is way different than a lot of others. But I've decided to go ahead and just start doing it anyway. I'd like to give Radiant Historia the first ever review score for the channel. Radiant Historia gets a genre-defining 7 out of 10. Hey you, thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you left me a like. They help the channel grow and let me know that you want more of this kind of content in the future. The channel is currently being supported by these lovely folks on Patreon. You guys rock! If you have any thoughts on the video, of course leave them in the comment section below along with suggestions on what I should do next, but also answer this question to prove that you made it to the end of the video, if you feel like it. And finally, if you found this video by accident, then subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. You can also hit the notification bell. Ringing the little bell will let you know when I upload a new video. See you next time!